What's up, you guys? So for this video, I originally wanted to talk about cults. Cults in history, scariest cults, whatever, that sort of thing. And we are going to get into that. However, this video has essentially evolved into something a little bit different. First thing we gotta do, we gotta cue the spooky intro.
I wish indeed that my mother, whose memory I cherish across the veil of years, could have been here to see it.
So a few years ago, I was told a story about this place that's very close to where I live, maybe about 10 minutes away from here, that supposedly has a little bit of a weird situation going on. I don't know if it's still happening, but it's possible that there were some people murdered here. Some weird sort of rituals went on here. I've been trying to investigate this place for several years now, trying to get the information straight. It's incredibly difficult to literally find anything on this place, and I'm just literally trying to get to the bottom of it. Because realistically, if people were murdered here and some weird sort of shit went down, this is probably something that people should know about, and I don't know, it's honestly, it's kind of fucking scary. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think I may have found a cult. And I'm gonna try and investigate this cult. So stay with me and let's see what happens.
How very much I've loved you. How very much I've tried my best to give you a good life.
It's far, far harder to have to watch you every day die slowly, and from the time you're a child to the time you get gray, you're dying. Not to be feared. It is not to be feared. It's a friend. It's a friend. You're sitting there. Show your love for one another.
Today we're going to be looking at some of the scariest cults in history. Some of the craziest cults in history sometimes are just ideas and philosophies and things that we just don't quite understand. On November 18, 1978, approximately 918 members of the People's Temple were led to their death by Reverend Jim Jones. This all happened in a place known as Jonestown, Guyana. It was called the largest mass suicide in history. About 304 of those who died were children. The goal of this notorious cult was to build something called a utopian society. It was the mission that people believed in. It was going to be a place where everyone could live, work, and play in a socialist society. The cult led by Jim Jones, who was known to be a very charismatic and convincing man. He was able to convince people of the ideals of equality, and this was the whole mission of the Jonestown camp. Many of the people who joined the People's Temple wanted to leave the United States in the first place during times of uncertainty. After managing to flee the United States, Jim Jones decided his location was going to be Guyana, and the reason why was he was going to build his temple literally in the middle of a jungle, so there were no prying eyes and no one could see what was going on. So no one would know what was to become of the 900 plus members of the Jim Jones cult. The people there were excited about what they were doing. It was like living in heaven. They were absolutely convinced. They were full of hope. As the relationship between Jim Jones and the United States of America began to gradually dissipate, things gradually got worse. The workload increased, the population increased, the food supplies diminished, and Jim Jones' paranoia began to grow.
A handful of our people, with their lies, have made our life impossible. And we are sitting here waiting on a powder keg. I don't think this is what we want to do with our babies.
White knights began to increase. What are white knights? It was a method of practicing revolutionary suicide for when the moment would come. Jim Jones would essentially teach people how to drink the Kool-Aid, quite literally. But still, people were convinced that this was the best place in the world to be. The weirdest part of the story that I think a lot of people don't know is the fact that a congressman from the United States went to Jonestown to take a closer look at what the People's Temple were doing. Here he was shot and murdered, the only congressman to ever die in the line of duty. After that situation occurred, Jim Jones panicked and decided it was time to put the practice of the White Knights to the test. First to go were the children, carried out by their mothers with syringes.
Mother, 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 please. Mother, please, 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 don't do this, don't do this. Lay down your life with your child, but don't do this.
In the meanwhile, while all of this was happening, Jim Jones' own wife, Marceline, was trying to convince him to stop, but Jim Jones wouldn't listen. Next were the adults. With the Flavor Aid brought out, it was their turn. Not all, however, were believed to initially have committed suicide. A lot of them were found with holes in their shoulders from possibly syringes. There was obvious evidence of murder here. So essentially whoever decided that they didn't want to commit suicide were essentially forced to die anyways.
Quickly, 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 quickly. Sisters, good knowing you. No more pain, Al. No more pain, I said, Al. No more pain.
To this day, no one knows in fact whether Jim Jones committed suicide or not, but we do know, however, that he never drank the Kool-Aid. A few people did manage to escape, and one of those people includes Jim Jones' own adopted son. It was a pretty devastating piece of history, and let's just hope that something like that never happens ever again. Okay, so a little bit of backstory on this cult, how I heard about it. Basically, a few years ago, I used to be friends with a person who told me one night that they had a friend who had been involved in a cult. The story goes that this friend apparently hooked up with a bunch of people. I guess initially he didn't really know that they were in a cult. I guess they took him to one of their rituals or one of their events or something like that. And I guess for whatever reason he was interested and he decided to join them. The story eventually got a bit crazy where on Halloween night or somewhere around Halloween night during the 80s, this guy was brought to one of the events and literally witnessed these people drugging and killing a very young girl. Hence why this story is getting a little bit crazy, because now we are talking literally about murder. After he witnessed this, apparently he decided to run away from these people. They chased him, but he did successfully get away, hopefully forever. I don't know after that exactly what happened. That's the part of the story that I know. A little bit of details that he gave my friend was that this group was in fact a cult. I guess they were considered some sort of type of satanic cult, which is some pretty creepy and scary shit. After my friend was told about this place, he, I guess, didn't really 100% believe him. So he decided he was going to go and check this place out for himself. What the place was an oddly placed church, I guess you could call it. There's also like a cemetery attached to it. So he went there, I believe it was during the day. It was him and his and one of his friends. They parked literally across the street because that was really the only place to stop. And they sat and waited for a little bit. No one was around. The church was closed. No one was there. No one was in the cemetery. It's like a countryside area, so there's really not too much around it. The closest things are probably a few farms and barns, but they're like pretty far away from there. Anyway, so they sat across from this church when all of a sudden a black van pulled up in front of the church. These people in the van got out of the van and looked at them, hopped back in, started yelling at them, and my friend decided, okay, it is time to go. So he peeled out, and the van apparently chased him for quite a while, but my friend got away. And I guess at that point, when you've been chased away from a certain location, obviously that's a little bit of evidence that there's something weird going on there. So he, I guess after that, decided, fuck that, I'm never going back. That's pretty much it. So my personal experience on this place, stupidly one night with a girlfriend from a while back, this was probably like a good 2 years ago. We were just hanging out one night and we were looking for somewhere to go. We were driving around, whatever, and I basically told her the story of this place, and of course she decides, let's go. So long story short, we decide to go, pull up to this place, and which I specifically told her, please don't stop in front of it, just kind of drive by and keep going and mind your own fucking business. But of course she decides, no, we're gonna pull over and look at this place. And that night turned into an absolute shit show. I shit you not. She had this weird feeling, literally just after driving there and leaving, she was saying that she had this weird, dark, kind of depressing feeling, which, I mean, I kind of got the same thing, but maybe not to the same extent as her. And yeah, all sorts of weird shit started happening that night. I remember going back to her house, and we were on the driveway at this point. We hadn't gone inside the house yet. I decided I was going to have a smoke, and I can hear banging like a gate kind of opening and closing repeatedly at the side of her house, which she did have like a metal fence kind of thing. But when I looked, the fence was closed. And then after I looked, I heard the noise again. So something was obviously repeatedly opening and closing this fucking gate at the side of her house. So that was the first thing that I guess happened after visiting this place. Then we decided to go inside, and things got a little bit creepier. So we decided we were going to watch a movie. First we were just kind of like talking, whatever, and then as I'm looking at her, so she has two, I guess, lazy boys. I'm in this one, she's in this one. And I'm looking at her, obviously we're talking, whatever, and I keep staring at her, and she's got like this black shadowy figure like above her head that just wouldn't go away. And I was literally rubbing my eyes thinking, hey, this is not real, my eyes are just messing with me, whatever. And then I decided I was going to call my grandmother, who does something called the evil eye. If you're Southern Italian, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's basically when we believe that we are cursed. So you can do a special prayer and essentially get rid of it. So that's what we did. I called my grandmother. She did the evil eye. She told me we both had it really, really badly. And normally you can tell if it's a male or a female who's like kind of cursed you, I guess. She said it was both. She couldn't specifically narrow down to whether it was male or female, which is kind of odd because normally you can. And after she did the prayer, they called me back. Literally the second that they called, it went away. Shit just really went downhill for a good couple of weeks. Like, something happened at this church. I know for a fact that something happened here, even to us, based on our personal experience. And I don't know, it's kind of strange. So this is a bit fucked up, to be honest with you. I have been trying to do a lot of research on this cult or mystery, or I don't know, whatever the hell you want to call it. And so I can't exactly find any information specifically on the history of this church that's not too far from here. And so I decided I was going to start looking at unsolved mysteries in Ontario, which is the province in Canada where I live. And it's a little fucked up because There's actually a 38-year-old unsolved murder case on this girl who was murdered back in the early 80s. I believe it was 1980 as far as I read in the article. I literally had to stop reading it. And her skeletal remains were found in the city where this church is located, and around the exact night when the person who initially told me this story said that it happened. So this is kind of fucked up. Like, I don't know if you guys realize how fucking serious this is getting, but like, as soon as I read that in the article, literally the name of the city popped up in the article, and I just had to back away from the computer. Like, this is when this cult group, the satanic cult group, had this girl, supposedly based on what this guy witnessed, they cut open this young girl's heart, who was supposedly a virgin, which meant that she was probably relatively young. They cut open her chest and literally ripped out her bleeding heart. Now, based on some of the information that I'm reading on this case that has never been solved for over 38 years now, it's believed that she was bludgeoned to death, which meant she was probably stabbed, brutally beaten, all sorts of shit, right? There's not enough real specific information. The part that's become a bit haunting, especially to me as I'm trying to find more information about this place, because to be honest with you, everywhere I look on the internet, there is literally no information on this place. There is literally a listing for where it's located and the names of the people who are in the cemetery. I'm even trying to do a little bit of research on that using these people's names, but the searches are just so broad. I don't know specifically if this church is related at all. I'm not sure. The problem has become that when you do Google searches on this very specific church, there is literally no information at all. The last thing that you see is probably about 8 or 9 posts, which I don't know if all these online article websites just so happen to share the exact same articles, but there's about 8 or 9 articles going out to each individual city. So you have like Brampton, Mississauga, Caledon, etc., stating that the church has closed on such and such date and that there was a mass or something on that date. And that's literally all the information that I have. And that was last year. Other than that, there's absolutely no history on this church, which I find a little bit hard to believe. And I don't know, it's just a very odd situation how there could be a church that could have existed for, almost 200 years, and there is absolutely no history on this church. Like, I just find that very surprising and very hard to believe that there's literally not even a single blurb on anything about this church. I don't know. It's just very, very strange to me. I don't know if I'm right, but we are going to get to the bottom of this, especially considering now that I'm finding out people were in fact murdered. Because to be honest with you, I didn't even believe that up until this point. And then I started diving further and further, and I started looking into unsolved murders. And even past this one girl who her case has been unsolved for such a long period of time, I even realized that there's been a few others, right? Like, the lists that I have is about 4 or 5 people. I don't know if they're all related, but there's just a lot of weird, odd parts to each story, and just the fact that they've been unsolved for such a long period of time. Now, a little bit more information that I found about the one main girl whose body was found in Caledon, not too far from this church. When they found her a year later, her body obviously had extremely decomposed. They had to actually, the way that they figured out it was her was from her dental records, for one. She was wearing the same clothes since the day that she was last seen. And the weirdest part is that underneath her body, they found a weird button, like a button that you'd attach to clothing, but it wouldn't get weaved on, I guess. I don't know. I've been trying to do a little bit of information on this button because it's a little bit odd. If you look at the button, which I'll show you on the screen here, it's in the shape of a figure 8 or infinity. Now, to most people, the figure 8 is exactly what it is, infinity, which is a number that it's like the last number out of all numbers, whatever. It goes on basically forever, never ends. But it can also be used as a symbol, for Satanism, which is a little bit strange. If you look at other symbols of, you know what, let's go in front of the computer and show you this. Okay, so obviously based on what we can see here, we have this, which is called the Leviathan cross. And then we go over here, and this is similar to what we have basically been looking at. The snake essentially eating its own tail. I mean, the one that we have is a little bit different, but to me, if you compare the figure 8 of that snake to this symbol, it's basically the same eerie concept. Just the fact that that button literally may be a symbol left by a satanic cult is fucking ridiculous. That's creepy as hell. So I don't really know what the next step here is to continue investigating. I may decide to go and visit this church again just to see if anybody's around, if anything weird is going on there. I don't know. Other than that, I think I need to go into the public records of Caledon to see if I can find any more information. Maybe I'll contact the Ontario Provincial Police to see if they have any information and possibly give them the information that I have. Maybe that can help them out with their investigation. Hopefully they're still willing to continue investigating almost 40 years later. But yeah, we'll just have to see what happens. But this story is definitely evolving. That is for sure. In the meanwhile, I am starving, so I'm gonna go get a shawarma wrap from Osmos because Osmos is the best, and I'm hungry. And yeah, so watch the next cult we have for you right now. This next one touches a little bit close to home here in Canada. A man by the name Rock Theriault led a cult for approximately 12 years. A father of 26 children, a doomsday theorist, and an original member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, eventually became a murderer. As a self-proclaimed prophet, he called himself Moses and was able to convince many people to come and join him in his camp. Here, Rock was able to convince his members that the end was coming. A date was set somewhere in February of 1979. This was meant to be Doomsday. This was when they believed the world was coming to an end. He built a small commune in the Eternal Mountain of St. Hogs. I think it's Hogs or Jogs, I'm not quite sure how to say it properly. Here, as he watched his workers building the commune, he compared them to ants, and this is where he came up with the name the Anthill Kids. With the commune established, he decided he was going to marry every single woman at the camp and literally impregnated every single one of them. The first time Rock ever committed murder was when he decided he was going to circumcise a child. Unfortunately, I don't think he knew what he was doing, and the child was found dead the following morning. The next murder was of a castration of one of the newest members of the group. He decided he was going to take a rubber band, an old razor blade, and ethanol, and remove the new member's testicle in order to solve his masturbation problem. Unfortunately, the man never survived. The cops finally caught on to what was happening with Rock Theriault and the Anthill Kids. They arrested him and he was sent to jail for 2 years. He was eventually released and decided he was going to build a brand new camp with his fellow murderers. Things got a bit darker. Violence had now become an ideology around the Anthill Kids, with women literally fighting other women and all sorts of terrible things, beatings on specific group members, and now even circumcision among some of the adult group members as well. Commonly amongst Rock and his fellow members, including his own son, molestation had been said to have become a rite of passage for some of the younger members. Finally, the government did get involved and took away all the children from the group, but it wasn't over yet. His deranged surgical procedures continued, and he even removed teeth and a testicle from another one of his members. He even conducted a surgical procedure on a woman without any proper anesthetic, removing portions of her intestines, which she later died from. His last acts of cruelty and just plain and simple weird situations were of him conducting weird sexual acts on his dead wife's body. He even later conducted surgery again on another woman after stabbing a knife through her hand to the table, and then decided to remove her entire arm simply because she had an ache in her finger. Thankfully, he was imprisoned later on and never saw the light of day again after he was killed by an inmate. So tonight's the night. I'm gonna go and visit this church and see if there's any weird sort of suspicious activity. What I'm gonna do right now first is basically get the camera ready, because there's a few attachments that I have to add to it, which I'll show you. Alright, so where do we start? First things first, I need our attachment. So we'll get that ready. I kind of just want to get everything ready so that way I don't have to set up while I'm there, because I don't really know what to expect at this church. Got some lights, make sure the batteries are good, which they are. We'll add one of those to the clamp. What else do we need? So I don't know if I'm going to need two. I'll keep one in my bag and then just attach one to the attachment here. And then I'm going to need my slightly longer lens because the one I have on here does not adjust. So, I mean, sorry, not that it doesn't adjust, it doesn't zoom. So I need to put this one on the camera so that way if there's any sort of weird movement, I kind of wish that I had a 300mm lens so that way I can zoom from distance. That would be pretty useful right about now. Anyways, and I'm going to keep one extra battery in my pocket just in case. And yeah, so I guess in case you're ever wondering what kind of stuff that I usually use when I do my paranormal investigations, this is pretty much it. So because I'm going to be in the car, because I probably won't be getting out, I'm just going to kind of be hanging around, seeing if there's anything going on. I'm just basically going to have this on the top of my camera. Okay guys, we are coming up to
400 meters, your destination will be on the right. Your destination is on the right.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived to this creepy fucking church late at night. Don't know where the light switch is on my fucking camera. So that's it. This is the place. Creepy as fucking all hell, middle of the night. To which I forgot to lock the fucking doors here. This place creeps me the fuck out. barn down there. There's a building right over there. I can't really see it all that well. But yeah. There's like this red flashing light down the road. No idea what the fuck that is. There's really nothing going on, to be honest with you. So this is probably where my friend had parked, this kind of clearing over here. You can see it. Would have parked right there, and he would have been right across. I really don't fucking like this place. I am not gonna lie, guys, but I am very nervous. I've done quite a few paranormal investigations, gone to some creepy ass fucking places, and to be honest with you, like, I have never felt this fucking nervous about a place in my entire life. Oh my god, I think there's somebody behind me. The Branch Davidians were a cult from Texas and were led by a man named David Koresh. The man was known to be a monster, a self-proclaimed prophet. People even believed that he was the son of God, but more like the son of the devil. He even told everyone that when he was young, God came to him and told him that he was the chosen one, that he was the Messiah. A little bit of history on the group itself. They essentially branched off of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, so their beliefs were very similar. The main difference between the two religions was the fact that the Branch Davidians believed in doomsday. They believed that the end of the world was coming. As David claimed leadership of the group, people started coming from all around the world to join and find out the truth. And because they believed he was the be-all, end-all, they literally gave him authority over their entire lives. He controlled everything from the way that they lived, they played, they worked, and even every single thing that they ate. Everything. Weird food things like the fact that adults would not drink milk, which is a bit strange. The fact that certain fruits don't mix with each other, like bananas and oranges, apparently were not okay. Bananas and apples were perfectly fine. Another thing was fruits and vegetables apparently were not to be eaten together for whatever reason. I have absolutely no idea. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. It is believed that they beat adults and children as young as 8 months old in the camp. We're talking severe beatings in order to teach them discipline and how to behave, even to the point of drawing blood. He believed all the women belonged to him, and they all eventually became his wives. Although it wasn't all at the exact same time. He would individually tell the husbands of these wives that they were no longer married and that their marriage was essentially dissolved and that they were now his wife. He would tell them that God would literally come to him and choose them for him, and that the men needed to become celibate and that they were now his wives. He believed that when the time would come for doomsday, that there would be a huge battle. And that battle, believe it or not, was said to be against the United States government. David Koresh and his branch started stockpiling guns and ammunition in order to prepare for the war. Eventually, the government started investigating the Branch Davidians when a UPS driver accidentally dropped a box and noticed there was a bunch of grenades inside of them. It's just so typical of UPS. The FBI and the ATF decided it was finally time to attack the Davidians, and so they launched an all-out raid. The only problem was that David somehow already knew that they were coming. When the ATF showed up, no one was outside, and suddenly they started shooting. Initially, 10 people died in the raid. The standoff here in Waco, Texas went on for 51 days, reportedly after delay from David while he was writing some important religious documents. Finally, the ATF decided it was time to make their final attack, and so they moved forward towards the doors when all of a sudden in 3 different places the building caught on fire. According to the FBI, 79 branch members died, including 22 children that were under the age of 17. And David Koresh's right-hand man, I guess, figured out that David was a loony bin, turned the gun on him, shot him, and then shot himself. And that's how the story of the Branch Davidians ended. Except there's a bit more to it. There's some questions about the entire Waco standoff and shootout and raid and everything. There's some questions that need to be answered. Who in fact fired first? There's a bit of a government conspiracy behind the entire raid itself and the Branch Davidians, and I just can't fit it all into this one video. There's just a lot of points that sadly don't add up. Missing documents from the investigation, missing recordings that could basically explain everything that happened in the situation. Some things need to be explained. But for now, that's it.
18-year-old Veronica Linkay left her apartment on Markland Drive in Etobicoke November 7, 1980. She never returned. Her family reported her missing. An extensive investigation failed to come up with any information